you are not one person, you are not one person. I know that sounds absurd. You feel like one person, you have one name, one face, one voice in your head narrating your life. But I'm going to show you something that neuroscience has known for decades and that physics makes even stranger. You're not a single unified being, you never have been. What you call I is a committee, a collection of processes, a chorus of voices pretending to be a soloist. And the most disturbing part is that the pretending is so good, so seamless, so automatic that you will resist what I'm about to tell you with every fiber of your being. Which, by the way, is exactly what a well-constructed illusion would make you do. I'm Leonard Susskind. I've spent over 50 years studying the fundamental nature of reality. Quantum mechanics, general relativity, string theory, black holes, and in all that time, I've never encountered a deeper mystery than this one. Not the mystery of what the universe is made of. Not the mystery of how it began, the mystery of what you are. Because if you don't know what you are, if the very thing doing the knowing is itself an illusion, then everything else is built on sand. Let me start with the experiment that broke open this entire question. It happened in the 1960s, and it should have changed how every human being on Earth thinks about themselves. It didn't because the implications are too frightening. The experiment involves patients who had their corpus callosum severed. The corpus callosum is a thick bundle of about 200 million nerve fibers connecting the left and right hemispheres of your brain. In the 1960s, surgeons discovered that cutting this connection could reduce severe epileptic seizures. The surgery worked, the seizures decreased, but something else happened. Something nobody expected. Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga at Caltech began testing these split-brain patients, and what they found was one of the most unsettling discoveries in the history of science. When you sever the connection between the two hemispheres, you don't get one person with a slightly impaired brain. You get two separate conscious entities inhabiting the same skull. Let me describe the experiments because the details matter. In a typical setup, the patient sits in front of a screen. They fixate on a central point. An image is flashed to either the left or right visual field. Now here's the anatomy you need to know. Your left visual field is processed by your right hemisphere. Your right visual field is processed by your left hemisphere, and in most people, the left hemisphere controls language, it can speak. The right hemisphere in most people cannot. So when you flash a word to the right visual field, the left hemisphere sees it, and the patient can say the word out loud. Simple. But when you flash a word to the left visual field, only the right hemisphere sees it. The left hemisphere, the talking one, has no idea what was shown. Ask the patient what they saw, and they'll say nothing. I didn't see anything, but here's where it gets extraordinary. Ask the patient to reach behind the screen with their left hand, which is controlled by the right hemisphere, and pick out the object that matches the word. They can do it perfectly every time. The right hemisphere saw the word, understood it, and directed the left hand to pick up the correct object. But the patient, the speaking patient, the one who says I and me and mine, has no idea why their left hand just picked up a hammer, and here's the part that should keep you up at night. When you ask the patient why they picked up the hammer, the left hemisphere, the talking hemisphere, doesn't say, I don't know. It doesn't say that's strange. I have no idea. Instead, it makes up a reason. It confabulates. It invents a perfectly plausible explanation on the spot. Oh, I needed a hammer to fix something in the garage, or I was just thinking about tools. The explanation is complete nonsense. The left hemisphere has no access to the actual reason because the actual reason exists in a different consciousness, a consciousness it cannot communicate with because the bridge between them has been cut. Think about what this means. There are two aware entities in that skull. The left hemisphere is aware of some things, the right hemisphere is aware of other things. Neither has access to the other's experience. And the left hemisphere, the one that speaks, the one that says, I, doesn't even know the other one exists. It fills in the gaps with fiction and presents that fiction as truth with complete confidence. Now you might say, well, that's split-brain patients. Their brains have been surgically altered. Normal brains aren't like that. We have an intact corpus callosum. Our hemispheres communicate, we're unified, and on the surface, that seems like a reasonable objection. But let me tell you why it's wrong. The corpus callosum is not a magical unity generator. It's a communication channel, a bandwidth-limited communication channel. Those 200 million nerve fibers sound like a lot, but each hemisphere contains roughly 85 billion neurons. The corpus callosum connects a tiny fraction of them, and the signals that cross take time. Not much time, a few milliseconds, but time nonetheless. What the corpus callosum does is synchronize the two hemispheres well enough that they can present a unified front. It's not creating unity. It's creating the appearance of unity. It's a negotiation channel between two semi-autonomous processing systems that have learned through a lifetime of practice to tell a coherent story. And here's evidence that even in normal brains, this unity is fragile. Experiments with dichotic listening, where different audio is played to each ear simultaneously, show that the hemispheres can process different information at the same time without either being fully aware of what the other is doing. Studies of visual attention show that different parts of your brain can be attending to different objects simultaneously, with conscious awareness flickering between them like a spotlight at a circus. That's too small to illuminate the whole tent, but the hemispheres are just the beginning. The problem goes much deeper than left brain versus right brain. Your brain is not divided into two. It's divided into dozens, maybe hundreds, of semi-independent processing modules, each with its own agenda, its own expertise, its own way of interpreting the world. There's a module that recognizes faces, a module that processes language, a module that detects threats, a module that evaluates social status, a module that controls your breathing, a module that decides what's funny, a module that generates the feeling of hunger, a module that produces the sensation of pain, a module that creates the experience of color. These modules don't all agree. They don't all want the same things. They don't all have access to the same information, and they certainly don't all constitute a single unified self. Consider something as simple as deciding whether to eat a piece of cake. Part of your brain, the reward system, the dopamine circuits, is screaming, yes, sugar, calories, eat it now. Another part, the prefrontal cortex, the planning and inhibition system, is saying, no, you're trying to lose weight. Think about your health. Think about how you'll feel in an hour. These aren't just different thoughts. These are different neural systems with different evolutionary histories, different computational architectures, and different goals. The reward system evolved hundreds of millions of years ago. It's ancient, it's powerful, it doesn't care about your diet. The prefrontal cortex is evolutionarily recent, fragile, easily fatigued, and constantly being overridden by older, louder systems. When you eat the cake and then feel guilty about it, that's not one person making a decision and then regretting it. That's two different systems getting their way at different times, and a third system, the narrative self, the storyteller, trying to make sense of the conflict after the fact. The neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga, the same man who did the split brain experiments, has a term for this. He calls the left hemisphere's narration system the interpreter. The interpreter's job is not to know the truth. Its job is to construct a plausible story, a story that makes you feel like one person making deliberate choices for rational reasons. And it's incredibly good at its job, so good that you've believed it your entire life, but it's a fiction, a useful fiction, an evolutionarily advantageous fiction, but a fiction nonetheless. Now, let me bring physics into this, because this is where it gets really strange. In quantum mechanics, we have a concept called superposition. A quantum system can exist in multiple states simultaneously. An electron can be spinning both clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time. A photon can be in two places at once. This isn't a metaphor, it's the literal mathematical description of quantum reality. And superposition isn't just a property of tiny particles, it's a property of the wave function of the universe. Everything in principle can be in superposition, including your brain. Now, at the scale of neurons and neurotransmitters, quantum effects are usually washed out by thermal noise. Your brain is warm, wet, and messy. Quantum coherence doesn't survive long in such an environment. So most neuroscientists will tell you correctly that the brain is essentially a classical system. But here's what's interesting. The very fact that your brain is a classical system, a system described by classical physics, means it's a system with definite states at each moment. And those states are determined by the prior states according to physical laws, which means your sense of being a single person making free choices is not just neurologically questionable. It's physically questionable. Let me explain. Your brain at this exact moment is in a particular physical state. Every neuron is either firing or not firing. Every synapse has a particular strength. Every neurotransmitter molecule is in a particular location. This state was caused by the previous state, which was caused by the state before that, going all the way back to your birth, to the formation of the earth, to the Big Bang. Now, I'm not going to wade into the debate about whether the universe is strictly deterministic or whether quantum indeterminacy introduces genuine randomness. That's a separate discussion. What I want to point out is this. Whether your next thought is determined or random, in neither case is it chosen by a unified you making a free decision. If it's determined, then the physical state of your brain at this moment uniquely specifies the next state, and the feeling of choice is an after-the-fact narrative imposed by the interpreter. If it's random, then quantum coin flips are influencing your neural activity, and the feeling of choice is still an after-the-fact narrative, because randomness is not choice either. The feeling of being one person making decisions is a story told by a subsystem of your brain whose job is to tell stories. It's not a report on what's actually happening. It's a post hoc rationalization designed to maintain the illusion of coherent agency. And this connects to something I've worked on for decades, the nature of information in physics. In my work on the black hole information paradox, I helped establish that information is conserved. It's never truly lost. The quantum state of the universe encodes everything that has happened and everything that will happen. Your brain is part of that quantum state. Every neural firing pattern, every thought, every experience you've ever had is encoded in the physical state of the universe. But here's the twist. The physical state of the universe doesn't contain a unified you. It contains a collection of interacting physical systems, neurons and synapses, and neurotransmitters that together produce the experience of being a unified you. The unity is in the experience, not in the physics. It's like asking, where is the hurricane? You can point to the clouds, the wind, the rain, the pressure differences. But there's no single thing that is the hurricane. The hurricane is a pattern, a process, an emergent phenomenon that exists in our description, but not as a fundamental entity. You're a hurricane. A pattern of neural activity that coheres well enough most of the time to function as if it were a single entity. But under stress, under anesthesia, during sleep, during seizures, the pattern breaks down and the multiplicity underneath is briefly revealed. Consider sleep. Every night you lose consciousness. The narrative self shuts down for hours. There is no unified you. There are dreams, fragments of neural activity, bizarre associations, but no coherent self experiencing them in real time. When you wake up, the interpreter boots back up, reviews whatever fragments of memory survived the night, and constructs a narrative. I slept, I dreamed about flying, I woke up. As if there were a continuous I throughout, but there wasn't. There was a gap, a discontinuity. The you who went to sleep and the you who woke up are connected by physical continuity of brain tissue, not by continuity of experience. Or consider anesthesia. Under general anesthesia, your brain doesn't stop working. Neurons continue to fire, but the coordination between brain regions breaks down. The modules become disconnected. The integrated information that constitutes consciousness drops to near zero. You're not one person anymore. You're not even zero people. You're a collection of disconnected modules running independently, none of which constitutes a conscious self. And when you wake up from anesthesia, you don't experience a gap. You don't feel like you were gone. You feel like you blinked and hours passed. The interpreter, once again, has smoothed over the discontinuity to maintain the illusion of a continuous self. Now, there's a theory in neuroscience that tries to make this precise. It's called integrated information theory, developed by Giulio Tononi. The basic idea is that consciousness corresponds to integrated information, which Tononi quantifies with a number called phi. The higher the phi, the more conscious the system. What's relevant here is that phi depends on integration, on how much the parts of a system share information and influence each other. A brain with high integration has high phi and is presumably conscious. A brain where the parts are disconnected, like a split brain patient or someone under anesthesia, has low phi. Multiple semi-independent modules have their own small amounts of phi, but no global consciousness binding them together. If Tononi is right, and there's significant debate about this, then consciousness isn't binary. It's not that you're conscious or you're not. It's that there are degrees of integration, degrees of unity, and your normal waking state is not perfect unity. It's a particular degree of integration that's high enough to produce the experience of being one person, but not so high that there's no possibility of internal conflict, contradiction, or surprise. You're not maximally integrated, you're well enough integrated to function, and the experience of being one person is the experience of being above a certain threshold of integration. Drop below that threshold and the multiplicity becomes apparent. But even above the threshold, the multiplicity is still there, hidden beneath the smooth narrative surface. Let me push this further with a thought experiment from philosophy. Derek Parfit, the philosopher, asked us to consider a teleportation device. You step into a booth on Earth. The device scans every atom in your body, records their exact positions and states, transmits this information to Mars, and constructs a perfect copy of you there. The original on Earth is destroyed. Did you just travel to Mars, or did you die and a copy of you was created? Most people's intuition says this matters enormously. If the original is destroyed and the copy takes your place, something terrible happened. You cease to exist even though someone exactly like you continues. But Parfit argued, and I think he was right, that this intuition is based on the false assumption that there's a deep fact about personal identity, that there's a fundamental you that persists through time. If there's no such thing, if you're a pattern rather than a substance, then the question of whether the teleported person is you or a copy is meaningless. It's like asking whether the flame on a candle that's been relit is the same flame as before. The question doesn't have a deep answer. And here's what connects this to physics. In the block universe picture, the picture that special relativity gives us, you're not a thing that persists through time. You're a four-dimensional structure in space-time, a world line extending from birth to death. Each moment of your life exists at its space-time coordinates. The you of 5 minutes ago and the you reading this now are different temporal slices of the same four-dimensional object. But what makes them the same person? Physical continuity, causal connection, memory. These are the threads that bind the slices together into what we call a person. But those threads are contingent. They can be broken, split the brain, and you get two causal threads. Put someone under anesthesia and the thread of consciousness is temporarily severed. Memory loss breaks the thread of continuity. And at the quantum level, the very notion of a persistent identical particle is absent. Electrons are indistinguishable. There's no fact about whether this electron is the same electron as 5 minutes ago. Particles don't have identities. Only quantum states have continuous evolution. So the deepest level of physics doesn't support the notion of persistent individual identity either. You're a pattern in a quantum field, an excitation, a temporary arrangement of matter and energy that maintains enough coherence to call itself I. But the I is the pattern, not the substance. Swap out every atom, as your body does over the course of about 7 years, and you're still you because the pattern persists. Preserve every atom but scramble the pattern, and you're gone. The pattern is what matters, and the pattern is not unified. It's a coalition. Now, I want to address something that I think is the most important implication of all this. If you're not one person, if the unified self is an illusion constructed by a narrative module in your brain, then what does this mean for responsibility, for morality, for how we should live? I think it means something profound but not nihilistic. The fact that you're a coalition rather than a dictator doesn't mean your choices don't matter. It means your choices are the outcomes of a complex negotiation among multiple systems, each with its own values and priorities. And the quality of that negotiation determines the quality of your life. When we say someone has good judgment, what we really mean is that the negotiation among their neural subsystems produces coherent, well-calibrated outputs. When we say someone is wise, we mean their internal committee has learned to integrate information effectively, to weigh short-term rewards against long-term consequences, to balance emotion with reason. Wisdom is not a property of a unified self. It's a property of a well-organized coalition. And here's what I find beautiful about this picture. The illusion of unity is not just an illusion, it's a functional achievement. Your brain has to work incredibly hard to maintain the experience of being one person. Billions of neurons coordinating across hundreds of distinct regions, sharing information through dense fiber bundles, synchronizing their activity through neural oscillations, all to produce this smooth, continuous, unified experience that you call your life. When that coordination breaks down, as it does in schizophrenia, in dissociative identity disorder, in severe brain injury, the result is suffering. The fracturing of the self is not liberating. It's devastating. The illusion of unity is something your brain fights to maintain, because without it, coherent action becomes impossible. So the illusion is not a lie. It's an achievement, a magnificent engineering accomplishment by the most complex object in the known universe. Your brain takes hundreds of competing, contradictory, noisy signals and weaves them into the experience of being one person living one life in one world. And that weaving is happening right now. As you process these words, part of your brain is processing the language, part is evaluating whether you agree, part is thinking about what you're going to do when this video ends. Part is maintaining your posture, part is regulating your breathing, part is monitoring the room for potential threats, part is generating a subtle emotional response to what I'm saying. And a tiny module somewhere in your left hemisphere is taking all of this and whispering, "This is me. I'm one, I'm here." That whisper is not truth, but it's not nothing either. It's the sound of 100 billion neurons cooperating well enough to produce something that has never existed before in the known universe. A pattern that can contemplate itself, a hurricane that knows it's a hurricane, an illusion that knows it's an illusion, and in knowing becomes something more. Let me end with this. When I look at the night sky, I don't see it with one consciousness. I see it with a coalition of neural modules, each contributing its piece. The visual cortex processes the photons. The emotional centers generate awe. The memory systems recall childhood evenings spent wondering at the stars. The analytical systems calculate distances and luminosities. The narrative self whispers, "This is beautiful and I'm seeing it." None of those systems alone is me. All of them together are not me either. Not in the deep metaphysical sense. There's no deep me. There is only the pattern, the constantly shifting, endlessly complex, miraculously coherent pattern. You're not one person. You are many processes pretending to be one person so convincingly that you've fooled yourself for your entire life. And the fact that this pretending works, the fact that this illusion holds together well enough for you to fall in love, to build cities, to write symphonies, to ask, "What am I?" That is the deepest mystery. I know not the mystery of what the universe is made of, but the mystery of what it's like to be a part of the universe that asks that question while not being entirely sure who is doing the asking. After 50 years of physics, I can tell you what quarks are made of. I can tell you what happens inside a black hole. I can tell you how the universe began, but I cannot tell you what you are. Because you're not one thing. You are a process, a pattern, a negotiation happening in real time between systems that don't fully know each other, bound together by nerve fibers and evolution, and the stubborn insistence of a tiny narrator that says, "I'm one, you're not one, but what you are is something far more extraordinary than one could ever be. Thank you for listening." And the next time you catch yourself thinking, "I decided," ask yourself honestly, which one of you made that choice? And notice how quickly the narrator steps in with an answer. That speed, that seamless confidence, that's the illusion at work, and now you know it's there. You can never quite unsee it. Welcome to the real you, all of you.